Welcome to Seniority Authority. I'm your host, Kathleen Toomey, and I track down experts to answer your questions on aging. Let's get smarter about growing older. Today, our lives are wildly different than any prior generation in so many ways. The internet, new medical advances, and we are living longer than any prior generation. Just consider that in 1940, when Social Security was launched, the average life expectancy was 65. Today, we're living on average 20 years past 65. But what does that mean? How do we find purpose and meaning after our careers have concluded, after our children have been launched? You're not yet done with life, but how do you decide your new life's purpose? If this is a question you have, our next guest has the answer, and it's specific to you. Thanks to our sponsor, the Riverwoods Group, Northern New England's largest family of nonprofit retirement communities, where active adults find community, purpose, and peace of mind. Visit riverwoodsgroup.org. Now, let's hear from today's guest. Welcome to Seniority Authority. I'm your host, Kathleen Toomey. One acknowledged fact of living a long, happy, and healthy life is to have a purpose. But what happens when you've already accomplished the driving purpose in your life? When you've raised your family, built your business, saved money for retirement? Now what? There's only so many golf courses you can play. That's where our next guest comes in. Danielle Oristian York is Executive Director and President of the nonprofit organization 2164. Her organization provides multi-generational advising, facilitating, and training for next generation level engagement with a focus on family, philanthropy, and foundations. Yet what they've learned and what their tools are applicable to a wider population. Danielle is a graduate of James Madison University and the Center for Creative Leadership Coaching Program. She's an experienced facilitator, trainer, and keynote speaker, and has more than 18 years' experience helping families, leaders, and organizations do work around change, identity, and the future. Welcome to Seniority Authority, Danielle. It's great to have you with us.
Kathleen, thanks for the invitation to be here.
Well, I am so excited because in 3 prior podcast interviews, 3 different people mentioned the 2164 tool. So I took it upon myself to track you down, order a set of the cards, and really wanted to have a conversation with you about this Picture Your Legacy pack, which I have in the studio right now. But let's start with, how did you get 2164 started, and what does 2164 stand for?
Sure. Well, first of all, I have to tell you, like, your opening sentiment around 3 other people in this deck of cards is like reminding me of the fun of my job when I used to travel and talk to people and they say, somebody gave me a deck of cards. And that's sort of extension of our mission through other people is one of the greatest joys and I think satisfying things for me working here at 2164. 2164 means multigenerational. So I'll tell you a little bit about the name and then how we came to be. 21, I think, is an age when, particularly here in the United States, young people come of age in certain states. It's the age of majority. Some people like they can drink a glass of wine or drink a beer. Sort of between 18 and 21, people move from older adolescence into young adulthood. And I think that laid next to 64, which is an age that I think people start thinking about what's next for them in life, as your opening just indicated, as you've sort of raised a family and you're thinking, where you are in your career path, like what's next, what's coming. And we lay the 2 ages next to each other really to symbolize the opportunity for generations to work together. I think we all come from somebody. We are inheritors of previous generations' work, whether they be our families or sort of the community we live in at large. And there will be generations who come after us. So thinking about how to partner in order to make change today, we think is much more successful than sort of the traditional baton passing that I think generations did before us. To layer into that, and I like the stat you gave around Social Security. Oftentimes I'll ask people if they know what the average lifespan was for somebody who was born in 1900. Kathleen, do you know average
I
lifespan?
I think I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm going to say 1900, the lifespan was 23.
Right. So in 1900, somebody who was born in 1900, they would generally be living until they were in their 60s. Women outlived men, and I think, what we know today is that people are living much longer. They have extended lifespan. And what we are living in that is unprecedented is there's now 5 generations above the age of 21 in America today.
Mhm.
So 5 generations sitting at perhaps the decision-making table rather than just the 2 that we've organized in our name. And I think that that's really what our name means, because it's what we do, is really helping people come together in community or family and to leverage the wisdom and experience of older generations, as well as the optimism and energy and innovation of younger generations. Charles and Andy Brompton funded our work initially. Charles is an inheritor of the Seagram's fortune. They make delicious spirits.
Oh, yes, I may have sampled a couple.
Me too, Kathleen. If I ever see you in person, we'll have to try one together. But he tells a terrific story about inheriting his father's business legacy and philanthropic legacy, and really feeling like he was walking around in a dead man's shoes. That baton was passed before he was able to make an imprint on the shoes that he was stepping into. And the work to reshape the culture and decision-making, he felt like was a period that was wasted, that they would have been much more effective and efficient, both at Seagram's and their philanthropy, he and his father had a chance to work together alongside of his brother. They were very interested in thinking about young people going to Israel to experience their birthright, element of their identity. He had this experience of sitting around with a bunch of what he described as old white Jewish guys, making plans for 18-year-old kids, and thought, this is not a good idea. How do we get young people to join us as fellow funders? And really failed at that effort. Hired my colleague in 2164's founder, Sharna Goldsecker, to help understand who young funders were in philanthropy in the time about 20 years ago, and how folks could work together, both in family and in philanthropy, to be more successful. So we were lucky to have 10 years of their support, and delighted to still be able to call them good friends and supporters. I think Charles says that he's our best looking next gen client, and he's turning 90 this year. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, to some people, it would sound like a total nightmare to dedicate a business toward bringing family members together and family members of different generations. Are there 1 or 2 consistent barriers that you encounter during your work that we could expect?
It's interesting that you describe it as a nightmare. I think in many ways it's reminding me of all the commercials that poke fun of Thanksgiving dinners that we have in this country and the difficulties we have with our families. And yet, families really are at the center of most of the economic engines in our countries. Most of our businesses were founded by families. Most communities are organized around family. And so I think particularly in our culture, we have this highly individualistic sense of self, and yet family remains very important. So to answer your question, though, I think there are, perhaps I would say in the beginning, what oftentimes happens is that there's this evergreen notion that every generation has about the generation who's coming after them. Like, what is wrong with them? Why don't they like the right kind of music? Why do they dance like that? Why do they talk like that? Sort of this evergreen, you're different than me, and who the hell raised you kind of a sensibility. So that's one thing I think that has happened with every generation. That isn't new.
That's true.
The kids in the 60s and their haircuts and their music and the way that they danced, or the kids today, right? The kids are always sort of on the leading edge of change, which is why they're so unfamiliar to those sort of seated in power. I think in addition, what we know from our research about next-gen donors and about young people at large is that values, the things that motivate us, articulate differently at different ages and stages, as well as in different generational cohorts. So, for example, I have a family where there's some differences in terms of what people were interested in giving money to. The next generation, I got a call from an aunt in this family who said, "We really love our kids and we would love to invite them into the experience of giving. However, they're going to want to save the damn whales. We're saving lives, human lives, and they want to take care of animals. And there's just no room for that in the way we think about things." What we found in a discussion with both of these families when we really explored values was that the younger generation articulated that they had learned about the value of life and about safety and about justice from their parents. They saw and applied that in that animals deserved that sort of safety and just experience also, just as much as human beings. Again, the value was the same, but the articulation of it was different. And usually when families can understand that, they can deal with the differences. They're a little more tolerant of differences and appreciative of the new lens that somebody else brings to their experience. I think also one other thing is that most of the time my experience is that parents and grandparents sit with a little bit of a prouder chest when they hear kids talk really intelligently about how they've made their choices, what they've learned, what sort of responsibilities they feel, and where they learned those things, which are from parents and grandparents.
Absolutely. Now, you work with extremely wealthy family foundations and individual families. And I think that many people, when they hear the word philanthropy, feel that philanthropy only happens if you have millions of dollars to give away. Yet, I believe that philanthropy can be done at different levels by different people. As a professional in this field, is that accurate? Would you say that philanthropy is misunderstood?
Yes. And I think if we look to the etymology of the word, philanthropy means love of fellow man, of fellow human. And I think at its root, that's how people are operationalizing that in the way that they are driving carpools or baking casseroles, tithing at churches, collecting money for a family who is in need, or organizing a huge staff and giving away hundreds of millions of dollars. At the end of the day, it's about how do we love our planet and each other and make the world a better place.
And I think you're right. That's accessible to anyone. And what we know from social science research is that when you do things for other people and you are focused on helping others, your brain chemistry changes and it can change your outlook on life. Can you share a little bit about your experience with that?
Totally. I'm so glad you asked the question because I think oftentimes philanthropy or generous acts really get organized in the spirit of selflessness, that it's really for others. But what we know from brain science and really just social sciences in general is that we as givers, people who are doing the work of giving, get just as much out of those experiences as those who receive when giving is done generously. Serotonin levels go up, dopamine levels go up, those hormonal and chemical elements of ourselves that we also feel when we're connected to somebody and when we're doing something that matters. So levels go up when we experience good giving, no matter, again, if it's the carpool, the casserole, or a grant. The act is the same.
If you're getting smarter, help us reach more minds. Leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Tell your friends to follow us on social or subscribe to our newsletter at seniorityauthority.org. What do you see happening in your clients' lives when they become more engaged in philanthropic activities? What have you observed over your career?
I think sometimes people, as they move into philanthropy, have a sense that they're going to do something different than they've done in other stages or phases of their lives, that parenting is over or that work life is over and now we're doing philanthropy. When in fact, philanthropy is an extension of themselves. So all of where they've been is actually very apropos to the giving that they're going to do. They take their smarts and experience that they've developed through work. They take their resources and networks and leverage those as well. And they take with them the basic building blocks of their identity, what matters to them, their values that they operationalize in decisions. They take their messages around money with them, whether those be good or not, and those come to bear. And they bring their sense of other as well, themselves and other, and how those two are connected around change. So I think one of the things that we do in parenting and in work, and I think particularly in philanthropy, is we bring our greatest and most audacious hopes and aspirations for the world. That I think people give themselves sometimes permission to do. But I think people who do philanthropy the best really embrace that sort of audacious hope.
I love that, Danielle, the audacious hope. And that ties into a little bit about what we were talking about at the top of the hour, is that oftentimes I feel that people, when they get to a time of retirement, their career is changing, they're stuck. They don't know what to do. They don't know what their next purpose is. And I think the 2164 tool is an opportunity for people to trigger their thoughts, trigger their imagination. Can you tell us a little bit about this tool and how it works?
And you're talking about the Picture Legacy.
Picture your legacy. Sorry, I'm using the wrong terminology.
No, you're perfect. We have a bunch of tools. So checking in. I think I like the way you describe the sort of linear progression through life and how people move through one stage or the next. But I think what undergirds all of that, whether you're a 20-something trying to figure out how to adult, or you're a 30-something trying to figure out how to balance career and family or raise good humans who are going to lead us next, or if you're somebody who's really focused on career, like to what end? At the end of the day, you are every day getting an opportunity to leave a legacy. God forbid the proverbial bus came around the corner and we didn't wake up tomorrow. What we do each day with our time is really how we are remembered. And I think the tool that you're referring to, Picture Your Legacy, is an opportunity for people to think about, what's the legacy I want to leave in the world? It's a set of images. We ask people to sort through them. There's some neuroscience behind the sorting experience. Our digital tool is also available, but has a different neurobiological mechanism that's used in it. But we ask people to sort a series of images, choosing 3, perhaps, that really speak to the legacy that you want to leave. To be transparent, since I know we're on podcast, these are images, there's no words assigned to them. And they're intended to sort of provocate us as individual thinkers about, what do I want to be known for? What matters most to me? And with those 3 cards or 5 cards, whatever you can winnow it down to really talk about, one, literally, what do you see on this card? I see a set of tall cedars, or I see a red kite flying in the sky. What's the data? Because that's even interesting. Sometimes people see different data. And then 2, metaphorically, how does it answer this question of what legacy I want to leave, or what my vision for the future is? With this set of colored pencils that I see tucked in a drawer, I want to leave a life that's about using humble tools to make the world brighter, and tools that are accessible to other people. That's what I get up every morning and I'm about. So whether I'm doing that through my conversation after church, whether I'm doing that in my professional life, or whether I'm doing that in my giving, I want to make sure that my behaviors are aligned with the legacy I want to leave. And if they're not, what do I want to do differently?
I think that's wonderful. And I think that would be a useful exercise for any of our listeners who are contemplating their future and saying, I feel done. I don't think you're ever done raising kids, but I'm somewhat done launching my kids, and I'm nearing my retirement. And I want to have, as you said, Danielle, an audacious hope for the future. It's one way to think about and tease your mind open to some possibilities. Because, as we said, we are all living so much longer. Do you see this extended life affecting the work of your clients, Danielle? That they're living longer, we are generally healthier at 70 and 80, and we have more opportunity to travel and do things. How does that impact the work of philanthropy?
I really appreciate the framing there. Yes, I think the extended lifespan gives people an opportunity to live in the world in different ways. I think traditionally, and I think even in traditionalists and baby boomers oftentimes thought there's distinct stages of life. I'm going to begin, I'm going to work, then I'm going to do family, and then I'm going to do later career and leisure. But what we know today is that really all of those opportunities come and go at different points of our lives. If we're living for healthy 80 years, work can come and go, family can come and go, the configurations of these building blocks of life changes. And so, yes, I think that's one of the things that we're terrifically designed to help families and individuals work on. I think, though, there's also, this piece that you're bringing up about the cards where people aren't necessarily always thinking about what's my purpose? What am I trying to achieve with my life? And I think as folks grow older, it's one of the best parts of my job is to hear people who've been on this planet longer than me reflect on their lives. Those people who are more aware of who they are report a higher degree of satisfaction with their life at any one of those stages. And when the wisdom stage of our lives, when we're able to reflect back and know ourselves more authentically happens, whether that be in your 20s or in your 80s, people have a higher sense of satisfaction with who they are and more confidence to go into the world and bringing themselves as the greatest tool in their toolbox. And that's one of the things we really promote. Money is wonderful, but it's not the thing that is necessary to make change happen. We really think that who you are as a person is really the greatest gift that you have to make towards change. So knowing yourself first and knowing what matters to you, where you want to go, your vision, your legacy, allows you to sort of make decisions along that path in a guided way.
I love that. And I love that you use the Picture Your Legacy tool to go deeper into that authentic self and to understand and explore what that authentic self is. And I think this is personally one of the advantages of getting older is that you're finally out of those angsty adolescent years and the challenging young adult years. And hopefully you've gotten to the point where you accept yourself and know yourself and you know your own foibles and you know who you are, so you can slough off all of the, I wish I was thinner, I wish I was more this, I wish I was more that, and be who you are. And from there, draw your authentic legacy out. That's a gift of being a little bit older.
And I think there's something about having space and time for reflection. So just to be transparent, our tools have no magic in them, but they are structures for reflection and provocation to consider something different. So what I think our tools do is they externalize sentiments, values, narratives that have lived within us, allow us to take them out and literally lay them on the table and look at them and say, what do I think about this? What might I want to do about it? So to be able to move with intention. So a lot of our tools don't use language or they have physical manipulation connected to them because we know that decisions get made in the limbic system of our brain, which doesn't have access to language. If I were talking, Kathleen, to somebody who's listening to this podcast or you, and I were to say, Kathleen, what do you want your legacy to be? People oftentimes say, well, I want my kids to be happy. I want my grandkids to be healthy. It's really hard to grasp what I want my legacy to be, or it just feels like such an affront to my mortality that I can't touch it. But having a simple sorting exercise with some colorful images lets people get very clear because this tool allows you to sort something in space that is larger than your shoulders, usually allowing your body to cross what's called the midbrain, allowing a more integrated experience of the left and right brain and pulling what's in your limbic system out through language. And it's terrific. It happens in 5 minutes. People say astounding, beautiful things. And then they have a guidepost and an end game of where they're headed, which is really wonderful.
I love your explanation of the limbic system of the brain and why the images work. Even people that are the most articulate, PhDs can benefit from something like this because it does tap into that other part of your brain and you're not looking for the specific words. Now, if some of our listeners are interested in finding the tool or finding a trained facilitator in their area, would they go to your website? What would they do?
They would. Yes. So 2164.net. And if you're interested in tools, there's a ton of them around money, about giving, about family, about next generation, values, vision, all structured in the same way that we've just articulated. You can use them for yourselves. You can use them around a small family gathering, or you could use them with your community. All available. There's also digital versions of several of these tools. So 2164.net. And if this is a conversation that you don't want to facilitate and you'd like somebody to join you, we're really lucky to have worked with over 1,000 facilitators in the US who have taken our course. So these are folks that are 2164 certified advisors. Their names and bios are also posted on our website under the About Us section. And these are folks who have agreed to a principle of practice around how they organize these conversations. They're trained both in the tools and the methodology we use. And they work in a variety of fields. They work in community foundations and Jewish federations across the United States and around the world.
Wonderful. That is a terrific example of how we can put this work into practice. And now we want to hear a little bit about you, Danielle. I have a new aspect of the podcast I'm calling the Fast Five Lightning Round. So this is to get to know a little bit more about you. We know about your work, we know about your foundation, but share with us, what is your favorite guilty pleasure?
Chips and guacamole.
Okay, along with maybe a Seagram's product or two. What about healthy practice? What do you love to do that's healthy?
My Pilates practice. I have a terrific teacher. I've learned a lot.
Wow, impressive. What is guaranteed to make you laugh?
My brother.
Great.
Yeah.
Older or younger brother?
Of course he's younger.
The younger ones are always the funniest. What's the last book or a book that you loved?
I'm not sure I'm getting the title right, but I think it's called The Love Song of W.E.B. Du Bois. It's a beautiful novel. Beautiful.
It's excellent. I've enjoyed that myself. And finally, when you're not working, what's your favorite escape?
Walking on the beach, sitting on the beach, somewhere on a beach, maybe even looking for some sea glass.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your work and sharing a little bit of yourself. If you are thinking about how to find a purpose, what you're going to do with the next 20 years of your life, check out 2164 and a number of the tools. That's our show for today. If you enjoyed it, please tell your friends and give us a comment or rating on Apple or Spotify so that more people can find us. Until next time, enjoy the chance to get smarter about growing older. That's our show for today. Did it spark a question? If so, send it to us at seniorityauthority.org and we'll track down the answer. Don't forget to subscribe, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and also rate us on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, let's get smarter about growing older.